I tested every budget mirrorless camera to find the best ones, and I realized the best camera for one person might be completely different for someone else. The right camera really depends on your shooting style and what you're shooting, and you might get a great camera that is simply a terrible choice for you, which is why I made this video to help you find the perfect budget mirrorless camera regardless of your shooting style or your content. So what if I told you that you don't need to compromise on quality when getting a budget camera? Because brands often make what is known as a dark horse camera. These are cameras where the brand specifically puts specs and features into a camera that are way better than it should be at that price point, thus making it the only and obvious choice in that category. And finding these cameras is a bit of a treasure hunt, but if you can find the right ones, it's good news for us. Which is why the Sony ZV-E10 is one of the best budget models you can get today, and there's a few features in this camera that absolutely put it way above every other camera in this category. Also, if you want the best pricing on the ZV-E10 or the other amazing cameras on this list, make sure to check out the links in the description down below. Inside the ZV-E10, you'll find a 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor, which is pretty standard, but Sony has added a few things to this sensor that take it way beyond standard. The Sony ZV-E10 is actually incredible in low light because of the pixel structure on the sensor. This makes it much easier to get better photos and videos without having to constantly fight for better lighting. Although you should still invest in better lighting. And the ZV-E10 has an impressive amount of dynamic range, especially for a budget camera. You'll have a much easier time shooting in high contrast scenes with this camera. And the Sony ZV-E10 also has phenomenal autofocus. Despite being slightly older, the autofocus still holds up and you will not be disappointed. However, the ZV-E10 does not have a flash for photos. And when it comes to shooting the actual photos and videos, the ZV-E10 does three things very, very right. When it comes to photos, it shoots at 10 frames per second, which is really fast, making this camera capable of shooting pretty much anything. And it also lets you shoot in 14-bit RAW, which allows you to edit your photos to your heart's content. And when it comes to video, it of course shoots 4K, but it's actually super sampled from a 6K image area, meaning the 4K really has the detail and clarity of 6K, and it shoots this mode at 4K in 24 and 30 frames per second, which is the standard real-time video mode. But slow motion is also becoming very, very popular, and no camera would be complete without great slow motion options. And the ZV-E10 shoots full HD at 60 frames per second and 120 frames per second. And the ZV-E10 also has cinema profiles built right in. I personally really prefer S-Log 3 and Cinema 4. This way you get an extra layer of control over your video colors and dynamic range. And with all of this awesome tech, Sony has also put it inside of a really solid and well-made body, and the camera body itself has a few really unique features. The button layout and ergonomics on the ZV-E10 are ultra minimal. It only has one button at the top to switch between photos, videos, and slow motion, and two separate record buttons for video and photo record. But my favorite thing about this body is that they've also included a really crisp onboard mic that is actually made of 3 separate microphones. So you honestly don't need to have a shotgun mic on this camera if you don't want to, and this way you can have a smaller and more nimble camera body. But for someone who's a seasoned camera vet or an enthusiast, you might want to consider a later camera on this list that has a more advanced camera body or a more traditional camera body. With the Sony ZV-E10, Sony has taken a pretty standard 24 megapixel sensor and gotten every last bit of quality you could possibly get from this camera, including 14-bit RAW, cinema profiles. This is a camera you can really grow with as your skill set also grows. Now, when it comes to budget cameras, people are often just starting out and they're brand new to cameras, but recently Canon released a camera that was made for that exact type of person, with features that take care of most of the technical hassle so you can just focus on getting great shots. And that is the Canon R50, which is replacing the very popular Canon M50 Mark II. The coolest feature inside of the R50 is automatic plus mode, which is actually a feature that you normally only see in smartphone cameras, which is known as computational photography, where it basically takes multiple images at once, combines them together into an enhanced image, where it takes the highlight area, the shadow area to maximize image quality and light capture. Another thing that makes your life so much easier with the Canon R50 is that there's a mode dial right at the top with different shooting presets like sports, food, nighttime, and portraits, so you can simply click over to the shooting scenario you want and get great results and focus more on creating content and less on the technical hassle. Although I do still recommend learning how to use your camera in manual mode to get the most out of it. And design-wise, the Canon R50 is exactly what you would expect from a camera like this. It has a side articulating screen, a flash for photography, and an electronic viewfinder. The camera is a little bit bigger compared to the Sony ZV-E10, but it's still small enough to take it anywhere you want to go. And inside the R50, you'll find a 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor just like the Sony ZV-E10, but the R50 does some interesting stuff as well that is different than Sony. The R50 isn't quite as good in low light, but Canon does have a nighttime mode on this camera specifically to enhance low light shots and reduce noise. And the autofocus is 10 out of 10 because it's a newer Canon camera. It also has subject detect modes for animals, people, and vehicles. But the biggest selling point of the Canon R50 and every Canon camera are the incredible Canon colors that have a very true to life look with a little bit of warmth. Skin tones and faces especially look great, so it's really good for portraits and shooting people. And the Canon R50 also shoots in 10-bit color for video and 14-bit RAW in photos, so you get quite a lot of control over your colors. And when it comes to shooting the actual photos, the Canon R50 shoots at a blazing fast speed of 12 or 15 frames per second, which pretty much puts the R50 at the same speed as most professional cameras. The Canon R50 can pretty much handle any kind of shooting scenario. However, something to note is that the Canon R50 does not have a mechanical or physical shutter. So when you're shooting in 12 frames per second, you're shooting in first kern mode, which is pretty close to having a mechanical shutter, so rolling shutter shouldn't be too much of an issue. And similar to the Sony ZV-E10, the Canon R50 also shoots in 4K that is super sampled from 6K, so you really get the detail and clarity of 6K but in a 4K video, and it shoots this at 24 and 30 frames per second, and it also shoots slow motion at 60 frames per second and 120 frames per second. However, the Canon R50 doesn't have any cinema profiles for extended color grading like the ZV-10, but it has HDR mode, which gives you a little bit of extra dynamic range, and with 10-bit color, you can still edit your videos to look professional. The Canon R50 is an amazing camera if you're on a budget, especially if you're a beginner, with smart features like Automatic Plus, 4K that is super sampled from 6K, and those amazing Canon colors. The R50 is the camera to beat this year. Because when it comes to budget cameras, the easiest way to get great photos and videos is to simply rely on colors that are in camera. And if you love Canon colors, there's one other camera out there, or rather one brand out there, that in my opinion is leading the industry in color science. Mainly because the colors are so unique and they give you over a dozen options for different camera styles right in camera. And that camera is the Fuji XT-30 Mark II. The Fuji XT-30 Mark II, or Fuji cameras in general, are always overlooked by most people out there. It's a small Japanese company and they really don't have the brand power of Nikon, Canon, or Sony yet. I mean, Sony makes my PlayStation. What makes Fuji cameras so unique when it comes to color is that the Fuji brand has actually been making celluloid film since 1934. That's almost 100 years, and that's definitely older than my grandparents. So with these cameras, you get this unique film emulation look built right into the camera. This allows you to get these beautiful cinematic and almost painterly colors, and most people try to edit their photos to look like film. And Fuji doesn't lack when it comes to technology either. They have a really unique sensor that is unlike any other camera sensor in the industry. This is known as the Fuji X-Trans sensor, which uses a unique pixel structure that essentially gives you sharper photos with less noise and more color and light information when compared to another APS-C size sensor. And the Fuji XT-30 Mark II has an X-Trans 4 sensor, which is 26 megapixels. The photos and videos from the Fuji camera have a really sharp and crisp look to them that look as good as a professional camera. And even when shooting at high ISOs, you don't really get noise, you instead get this really cinematic filmic grain. Now the Fuji XT-30 shoots at 8 frames per second in mechanical shutter mode, which is pretty slow compared to the other cameras on this list. But if you switch over to electronic shutter mode, you can get as high as 20 frames per second with no crop, or 30 frames per second with a slight 1.25 crop. These speeds are ridiculous and are actually as fast as video. So whatever you're shooting, Fuji has you covered. And video is equally as impressive. It shoots 4K up to 24 and 30 frames per second, but in 8-bit color. However, the saving grace is that it actually shoots at a data rate of 200 megabits per second. This is normally something you only see in pro cameras like the Sony ZV-E10 or the FX-30. And having a higher data rate in your video actually means that even though it's only 8-bit footage, you can still push it much further than you could with a normal 8-bit camera. And the Fuji X-T30 also has two unique color profiles for video editing. It has Fuji Eterna, which is kind of a Rec. 709 flat look that still gives you plenty of room to edit your colors, but it looks good right out of camera. And it also has Fuji F-Log, which is a log profile to really push your colors. And even though the X-T30 doesn't shoot 10-bit color internally, this really shouldn't be an issue because the main reason to get Fuji cameras is for the color profiles, which I recommend relying on mainly and just making small tweaks to your color. One thing to note, when it comes to autofocus, Fuji doesn't have the same research and development dollars as Canon and Sony, and while the autofocus is still pretty good, it has face tracking and object tracking, it's definitely not as fast as Canon and Sony. I'd give it a 7.5. One thing you've probably noticed is that the X-T30 has a really unique body. These bodies are actually modeled after retro cameras from the 80s and 90s. Instead of a mode dial, it actually has an ISO dial and a shutter dial, and for the most part, the aperture is usually on the lens. But it still has customizable command dials that you would normally find on a modern camera. And if you want more of a modern camera feel, but you like the Fuji colors, the Fuji XS10 is a very similar camera, but with a more modern DSLR mirrorless style body, really aimed at video shooters. The Fuji X-T30 is a great fit for someone who's on a budget, but they also want something unique and interesting without sacrificing anything on the technical side of your camera. And if you want the best pricing on your X-T30 or the other cameras on this list, make sure to check out the links in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.